Hi there, Elevated Planet community. This is John Drew here from Elevated Planet, and I'm here today with Mr. Chris Stiles of 365 Pin Code. Hi there, Chris.
Hello, John. Lovely to be on your call.
Yeah, well, it's great to be speaking to you. As I was working on the newsletter for the week, this happens to be edition number 22. And the one thing that suddenly came to mind with this was that I know number 22 is a special number. You know, it's something that I've learned a lot over these last year and a bit, really, through working with yourself and Suzanne. And it's been fascinating to really uncover a little bit about this. And I thought this would be a great way to introduce you into the community that we have and explain a little bit about what numerology is all about, because for most people, they don't even understand the basics of numerology. I know I didn't not that long ago, but it's a fantastic science, or however we want to discuss this. But Chris, can I just hand over to you just to give us a little brief overview of what you do and how you do it?
Yeah, certainly, John, and thank you so much for that. John, first and foremost, I think what needs to be clarified is that I am actually not a numerologist. So immediately people want to label you as something, as a numerologist or an astrologist or one of these things, an astrologer. What I am actually first and foremost is a research scientist. That has always been my training. My father was a mathematician, and as a child, he took me through many extensive exercises around critical thinking and developing the ability to look for deeper meanings within numbers, especially patterns. And I think that is probably my greatest gift, is to be able to work with series of numbers that identify patterns. And as a research scientist who is fascinated by understanding life, the mechanics of life, how life works, is life random, is actually life a grand organized design. One of the things that I found whilst on this journey, which is now probably in about its 12th or 13th year, is that numerology, which basically uses only numbers, provided me with a strategic tool which really allowed me to dig very deep into the human design. So much so that Suzanne and I, over the last 2 or 3 years, have been writing extensively about what is called an individual's intelligent mathematical blueprint, which I can now absolutely qualify and quantify. I know you've experienced that firsthand, so has Chile. And the revelations within that were certainly mind-blowing. It's research that has been ongoing for probably 5 or 6 years. And it is, if I may say so, way, way, way beyond standard numerology. Because if you go onto any numerology website, you'll see the numbers 1 to 9. You'll see the master numbers 11, 22, and 33. 22 obviously being of relevance to this call because it's your 22nd edition of Elevated Planet, and congratulations on that. That really is quite an achievement. But the work that we are doing is actually looking at the human design, especially from the concept of what I call human futurology. Now, this is a brand new scientific discipline that we have actually termed or coined the name human futurology. We view ourselves as futurists, strategic futurists, but working in the human dimension, not in the dimension of IT or technology, and actually trying to unpack the human or the individual intelligent mathematical blueprint to such a level that we are actually then able to take the information and really begin to write and publish scientifically about it, put it through statistical analyses, begin to apply what I would call the rigor of modern day science into the discipline, which will then take it way, way, way beyond this everyday notion that numerology is a woo-woo, metaphysical away with the fairies science. It's actually not. There's so much more to it. Unfortunately, it's never been developed to this level. That is our mission, and we are very delighted and thrilled to be working alongside yourself, Chile, elevated planet in order to be able to cast this research net so much wider. And John, to the extent that this year I've already started to make contact with many international universities, most of them either in the UK or in the US, where I am actually approaching them and saying, look, I have this vast body of work which has now been completed. And I would actually now like to write it up as a doctoral thesis and therefore put it through the actual rigors that a doctoral dissertation goes through, so that we can actually begin to reshape how people begin to look at this world that you and I are so incredibly fond of, which is, if you will, the spiritual dimension and its mechanics.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, what really amazed me is the fact that so much around us, our entire planet, universe, us individually, it all comes down to numbers. And that, to me, that seems crazy, because it's like we just believe we're the organic beings and we're here on the planet for whatever period of time it's going to be, and everything feels so random. But one of the things I learned from you and Suzanne through the gift of the pack, right? This is the numerology pack that Chris did for me some like 13 months ago, a year ago, or whatever. But, you know, it's amazingly extensive, but it's so incredibly accurate. And I couldn't believe myself when I started going through this and you were taking me through this step by step. I was thinking, well, how can this be? How can it be that my life can be summed up within these charts? And then we went the next stage and we took it, like you did a reading for Joe Lay, you did a reading for the business, and it got us to where we are now. And it just blew my mind, but it's reality.
John, thank you very much for those kind words. And yes, it is. In actual fact, I think that what this is beginning to lift a layer on how much intelligence sits within us. The fact that we are actually a grand organized design. And if you think about it, all the great minds have always said that mathematics is the language of the universe. So if we are an expression of the universe, which we absolutely are, then why would we not have a mathematical design? The thing is, John, if I may actually be so bold and so brave as to say this, it has been very convenient for people to be kept in the dark. It has been very convenient for people to be kept dumb for a very, very, very long time as to the mechanics of the human on an individual level. The work that we are doing, and in partnership with yourselves, and I think that is so incredibly important. It comes back down to the number 22, because the number 22 is all about working in cooperation, collaboration, peace, harmony with others around a much, much bigger goal and in a constructive alignment with and to that objective. And yes, you know, Suzanne, being a phenomenal strategic thinker, gave me some incredible direction at a time when I was really floundering in terms of the research and the mathematical model that I was developing at the time. Yes, we have uncovered something that is absolutely amazing. But the thing is, this revelationary and revolutionary research is only going to take off when people actually begin to open their minds as to the fact that we are so much more than what we can even begin to fathom. And when you actually suddenly realize that your date of birth and your name are not random, that there is without a doubt an incredibly, incredibly brilliant and genial set of processes that have taken place around you before you were, if you will, placed into this meat suit, this physical life form through which you and I are now interacting, then you begin to realize how much more is going on. And that is why I say the work that we are doing is really, on an intellectual level, it is very, very explosive. Sometimes it's absolutely too much for people to handle because they actually just cannot get over the scotoma that they have in their heads around the fact that we are so much more than this. But given the nature of the subject, and given the fact that I am a research scientist and will forever be one, This is work that I will be doing until my dying day. And it was a great joy for me to be able to work with you and Jolie, to be able to unpack your mathematical blueprints and to actually have the two of you come back and say, this is phenomenal. Because John, I've got a lot of time for you. You're a switched on guy. You've got a very, very good way of looking at things. And if the work that I was producing was junk, you would have said right away, look, Chris, this doesn't float my boat. But it absolutely blew you away. And I believe that it is part of, if you will, this movement towards elevated planet, which in turn means elevated consciousness, which in turn means that you are a mathematical expression of genius, as am I, as is Suzanne, as is Jolie, as is everybody who watches this recording.
It is fascinating. I mean, again, it is difficult for a lot of people to open their minds to this to a large extent, because we get so steeped in our own version of reality, which the westernized version, and I know, and I think one of the big advantages I have when I'm coming into this, like Jolie has been like in the world of the mystic for many, many decades. I, on the other hand, I'm relatively new to this, because my mind was blown apart about 4 years ago when I realized that the universe and the world was so much bigger than I'd ever realized. And it's incredible once you start to unpack this stuff. And the numerology thing, yeah, I mean, you talk about the genius of this, really. I mean, I know I have a book back here called The Soul's Gift, which really talks about how your life is pre-planned. You work out in advance how you are going to go through life. Now, this all gets packed into the numbers, right? And it's not that everything in life is scripted. I get that, right? We'd still have free will. We can still go in a number of directions. Yet there is a framework, right? Is that the way you see it?
Absolutely, John. And what is incredibly important, so let's just pause for a moment and talk about Jolie, because she's a critically important component of Elevated Planet and your journey forward. And I think your choosing her as a strategic partner was probably one of the most incredibly wise things that you've ever done. Firstly, because she carries the master number 22 life path. If you look at her date of birth and you add the various numbers to it, which is the day that she's born on, the month she's born in, the year that she's born in, and lock them together, you come to the number 1993. Now, 1 + 9 + 9 + 3 = 22. So Jolie carries this very powerful master number 22 life path, which is, if you will, the master builder. You know, so these are people who have incredible gifts to be able to help transform the world. But, and now I'm just going to, if you don't mind, John, now I'm just going to raise a couple of red flags between people who are so gifted and the world that we currently live in, which is a very, 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 and I believe intentionally dumbed down situation to be able to exert control on the highest level around people, and, if you will, to prevent us from using the incredible abilities that sit within us, to rather create fear than joy, to rather create doubt than confidence. Anyway, let's not go there. Otherwise, no doubt I'll soon be labeled as one of these crackpots, which I am very, very doing my best to avoid. But what this brings into frame is somebody like Jolie, with her ability to tap into the invisible metaphysical dimension. That is an incredible gift. However, the world we have right now is one whereby, if you were to place her and her gifts in front of an executive team of a blue chip corporate, every single member in that team might be exceptionally intrigued, if not astonished, if not blown away by what she has to say. However, they would not have the guts or the strength to be able to say, hold on a moment, we need to work with her, there's something more. Why? Because immediately, given the architecture of the world that we currently live in, especially the world of corporates and business, etc., they would be labeled as being different, I think is probably the nicest word that I could think of, many others, but we're in front of polite company here. And as a result of that, immediately their career will come under threat. Why did you do this? A CEO might sit in front of Jalay and be absolutely blown away, but has he got the strength and conviction to bring her in to work with his C-suite executives? No, because they would in turn think that he's barking mad. So this is the challenge that we have at the moment. And when Suzanne and I began this journey about 13 or 14 years ago, and through the talk radio show that we hosted for 3.5 years, which delved extensively into the human psyche, business coaching, life coaching, et cetera, entrepreneurial success, where we got to interview some of the real leaders in their field. What we discovered is that the only way that right now, and I'm still talking 2022, John, that you can get this message that you are so passionate about, that Jolay's so passionate about, that I'm so passionate about the fact that there's so much more out there. The only way that you can get this safely into people's world is through something like numbers, where you are able to provide hard numerical evidence and proof of events, of circumstances, of profiles, et cetera. Why? Because every CEO or COO or CFO or C-suite executive is used to opening up a pack, and within the pack, there's loads of data, tables, graphs, et cetera. So it's their happy space. It's their safe space. So we've got to play into that space. And this is something that we at 365 PIN Code are trying to do, is build the bridge between the world as we know it, which is fear-based, and the world that Jalay and you wish to move people to, which is not fear-based, which is actually so much more, which, as you say, is elevated consciousness. But that bridge has got to be a practical bridge. And this is why, and I know we've spoken about it at length, but this is why our partnership with yourselves is so incredibly important, because that practical bridge, if you will, gives people the safe walkway for them to tiptoe into our world. And then if they get a little bit scared, they can reverse out and then they can tiptoe a little bit forward, but at least it's numbers driven. The stuff that Jolay does is off the charts, absolutely off the charts. I can't do it. I can't understand it. She's in a world of her own, and a realm of her own. But in many ways, and again, it comes back to the 22, the genius of the 22, the master builder, and many things that have happened in this world of ours have been massive transformation, changes, etc., the building of new things, ideas, concepts, structures have been done through people with this number 22 life path. So, you know, she's got a massive role to play, but she must be so frustrated in many ways because, if you will, she's ahead of her time.
Yes, and it's bridging that gap, isn't it? It's actually putting down safe foundations. This is why with Elevated Planet, what we're trying to do is kind of, you know, a big part of this is there to appeal to the mainstream. It's turning the negative media on its head, and it's kind of understanding that that is something which people are comfortable with, because we all know that the media always kind of just reinforces the negativity and the fear-based way of approaching life. So it's unnecessary, and we want to turn that around. Now, people do get that, you know, regardless of whether you have any degree of spirituality about it. I think people can see that for themselves. That's not rocket science. But then it's balancing it out, having fun in life, because I do think this is like part of elevating who we are, and it is elevating our emotions to a better place, which is the place that we all want to be. We all want to be living in, you know, with love, laughter, and getting the right lifestyle behind us. You know, that's our foundation. But we create the opportunity for the spiritually curious to be able to explore, as you say, to tiptoe across that bridge and then go back again if they're not comfortable with it, and go back to their version of reality, but an opportunity to explore. So I think you put that across incredibly well. Now, a question for you, Chris. 22, obviously that is a number that is associated with Jolay. Who else out there that we might know in the world today might also be a 22?
Well, John, great question. And the master number 22, if I can just digress for a second, the master number 22 is known as the number of the master builder. And people that have this number, especially in their life path, have been, if you will, blessed with the ability to do and achieve phenomenal things this lifetime. However, this has to be done in cooperation, collaboration with others, and it has to be done in a way which is being driven for the benefit of many, not just themselves. If you take, for example, Sir Richard Branson. Sir Richard Branson, I think, is probably one of the greatest architects of change in order to be able to do things to benefit people. So wherever he has seen something that he thinks is wrong or that has been developed in a manner which has evolved into being exploitative, he will then go and completely re-engineer the business model. And he will say, hold on a moment, people are not getting their bang for their buck here. And that's what the 22 is, because the 22 is a feminine energy. Now, Sir Richard Branson has a number 22 life path, as does Joe Lay, as does, for example, Meghan Markle, as does one of the current British MPs, who was born on the 16th of June, 1962. They've got these number 22 life paths. But the thing is, and this is the rub, when you have a master life path or a master number, you've got to remember it's about mastery. So that life path presents you with two options. You either honor the double 2, which is the feminine energy, doubled up or amplified, working in a manner that is cooperative, collaborative for the collective good of all, or the number 22 drops into its lower octave, which is the number 4. 22, 2 plus 2 equals 4. And the number 4, which is the lower octave of the 22 life path, actually is all about me. And this is where things go wrong. So we are going to be facing a very, very interesting year. And if I might digress for a second, John, because my grasshopper mind has just moved in about 500 different directions all at once, and I'm really trying to rein it in and just kind of stay focused down one channel. But this year, 2022, brings in two numbers, 20 and 22. Therefore, the master number 22 is going to be playing itself out very powerfully this year, as is the number 20. Now, if we take the number 20 and we just pause for a second and we say, hold on a moment, let's just go and dig up a little bit around that number. And we go and take a journey. And I actually enjoy doing this from time to time, but believe it or not, even though people might say, oh, goodness me, this is about as unscientific as you can get. I actually love pulling out the range of the master or major arcana within the tarot deck and actually having a look at the number 20. And the number 20 is dealing with judgment. So how fascinating that if we look at this year and we just split those numbers down the middle, 20 judgment and 22 the master builder. In other words, when people with this number have been acting in a manner where they have been exploiting, if you will, the system or the collective of the system for their own advantage, then they are going to be brought under extreme judgment. And mark my words when I say that. I don't say that lightly. So this is the whole thing. It's like when you are blessed with one of these incredibly rare numbers, the journey that you are on is a journey that is so much bigger than you. However, when you turn that journey into some type of narcissistic endeavor, where you leverage these incredible abilities so that it's all about you and winning and power and this and this and this and exploiting, if you will, the meek and the mild in order to get to where you want to be. That moment of comeuppance is always coded into your chart. And John, I think this is probably one of the most fascinating things that has been revealed over and over and over again in the life path mathematical modeling exercises that I've done, and we're literally talking thousands and thousands and thousands of charts that have been analyzed, which is incredibly important because that's the only way that you get rigor within research data, is to actually see that as much as we might not want to know this, when we look at the mathematical architecture of our life from birth to death, there are definitely moments of karmic comeuppance. And if you have not lived your life as you were meant to, according to your design, when those moments of karmic comeuppance present in a given year or over a couple of years, that's it. Game, set, and match. You can do what you want. It's going to be a great white shark attack in your life. Finished. And that suddenly brings in such an incredibly interesting notion around vengeance, around the need for vengeance. Because when you suddenly realize, oh my word, hold on, all of this is actually built into this grand design, that if you actually behave in this way, as you sow, so shall you reap. Law of karma, law of cause and effect, and bang, there it is. But the thing is, because we are unwise or unaware, or even if I may use the word unconscious as to this design, we often feel that we now have to go and exert retribution upon others, etc., because we've been harmed in whatever shape or form. Whereas in actual fact, it's all there in their design. And as they have acted and as they have sowed, etc., so shall they reap. Which really begins to turn much of how we approach the world and life on its head. But back to the year that we find ourselves in, 2022. Now, let's just take a big step back here. And we've dealt with the number 20. We've looked at the number 22, which is the master builder, and the positives and the negatives around that. But now we come to a very interesting year because we have, if you will, 4 numbers. The year 2022 carries within it 3 by 2s and 1 by 0. The 0 is always an amplification factor. Therefore, if you will, whatever the numbers are that exist are their characteristics or their vibration or their essence is massively amplified. So that's all the 0 does, is amplify it. Right. Now we've got 3 2s. Oh my goodness gracious me. There's no other number counterbalancing it. None. So what is the number 2? The number 2, and you mentioned this word earlier, and I almost leapt out of my chair as you mentioned it, because the word was balance. Remember you spoke about balance earlier, John?
Yes.
Well, the number 2 is all about balance. It's the feminine energy. It's most importantly, it's about equilibrium, right? It is cooperation, collaboration, partnerships, diplomacy, nurturing, love, kindness, etc., etc. Now, deep breath. 2022 has got 3 2s. In other words, there's an overabundance of 2s. Plus there's a 0, which is going to really add booma into this number 2. So what are we dealing with? I believe that we are dealing with a year which is going to have emotional outpourings on a level that we have probably never seen nor experienced.
Wow.
Because the number 2 is the feminine energy, this is going to be, if you will, a surge of feminine energy like that is going to, like we, as I say, we've never experienced. It's going to be almost biblical and of mind-blowing proportions. The thing is, because it is such an extreme set of coding, 3 2s and a 0, there is a very, very high probability that this year, this emotional outpouring is going to be of such an intensity that it's going to ricochet or swing what we think of as universal balance right to the other side. So I think that during this year and by the end of this year, we will be possibly experiencing a very unbalanced or out of sync system.
Right.
Massively emotional with if you will, logic really on the back burner. And the thing is, logic and emotions need to be balanced. So that, I believe, is going to in turn create, towards the end of the year and into 2023, potentially, and I use the word potentially because I never want to be perceived as one of these, gurus or crystal ball gazers or whatever, but I think that by 2023, hundreds of thousands, if not tens of millions of people around the world are going to be desperately searching for a new norm, for a new truth.
Yes.
And my intuitive study of the numbers tells me that this is when this will start to turn around. Also, remember, John, this is a year when anything that has been oppressed or suppressed is going to explode.
Mm.
So let's get into an extraordinarily controversial topic at the moment, if we may, just for a minute or two. And I'm actually going to raise the issue of Prince Andrew and what is happening, and the chaos, and he's, if you will, being stripped of his royal duties and his HRH, etc., etc. Well, you see, the thing is, this is the start of what I would call the feminine revolution, the feminine energy revolution. Now, if you look at Prince Andrew and you go and study his numbers, Prince Andrew is born on the 19th, and he has a number 19 life path. Therefore, the number 19 presents in double impact in his 365 pin code, or, if you will, elevated planet consciousness design.
Right.
Now, the thing about karmic number 19 is it says that if you enrich yourself, the number 19 is a number that deals with leadership and powerful leadership. Nelson Mandela, born in 1918. Do the maths, 1918, 19. So his world or career number was 19. Look at the change that he wrought throughout South Africa, but for the better.
Right.
So the number 19 is a karmic debt number, and it carries within it huge power and huge potential to do phenomenal things in terms of leadership. But the thing about leadership, John, and I think this is something that has been lost at the moment throughout this world that we live in, is that the purpose of leaders is to serve others.
Right.
And leaders are so much at the moment about themselves. In fact, much of the world that we live in is actually completely controlled by narcissistic leaders.
Sad, but true.
And what has happened with Andrew, and I mean, I've done it, I've studied him, I've modeled and mapped his entire life path. And the reason his life is collapsing right now in the way it is because he has misused and abused his position of power. And in a year now, which is coded universally for the feminine revolution, well, he's getting his comeuppance.
Right.
And this is just how it is. And I've actually published on 365pincode.com under the research piece, which is set aside, which is called the pin code. That is, if you will, the tab where all of the research sits. I've published an extensive article on Prince Andrew, and if people would like to go into it and go and have a look, there it is. They will actually see that the years that he is in right now coincide. In other words, the mathematical design of his life coincides perfectly with number 19. Therefore, this is all that moment that I spoke earlier of karmic comeuppance. And as you sow, so shall you reap. And John, I am incredibly grateful to the likes of yourself and Jolay and Elevated Planet, pioneers that are doing stuff. I mean, look at this. Here I am, sitting in a tiny little office in Hampshire. 6 months ago, we relocated here from South Africa. You're sitting in your tiny little office there. I think your office looks far better. Mine looks very Spartan at this moment in time. But here are two people using technology in order to get a message out there to people, hopefully around the entire world, that there is so much more to life than what we can ever even begin to fathom. And I really hope that very soon global leaders, governments, strategic thinkers, strategic planners will begin to sit up and take notice of the work and the efforts that people like you and I and our support system are doing in order to give this world what I believe is a very needed shakedown in terms of so much of what we believe to be true about life is in actual fact a lie.
Yes.
And we need to actually, number one, be brave enough to acknowledge it, and number two, be bold enough to then go into this incredible world that is emerging, the world of the Jolay, which is invisible, but therefore should not just be cast aside.
Yes.
And money should be set aside for research and tremendous scientific and intellectual endeavor into this. I mean, for goodness sake, if I look at how much money is wasted every single year across the world on what I call arbitrary research, it actually just does my head in. The whole world right now is crying out for a new philosophy, a new way of thinking, a new life, a new raison d'etre, if you will. And I truly believe it behooves global leaders to actually step up and start taking very, very, very serious cognizance of what I call the SQ. So it all began with IQ, John, intellectual quotient. There we go. John's brighter than Chris. Rah, rah, rah. Hold on a moment. Oh, scratch again, scratch again. There's something called the intellectual quotient, or sorry, the emotional quotient, EQ. Oh, my word. Now, all the corporates and the businesses around the world went mad about EQ. Now, if you don't have EQ, you can't be a C-suite manager. Well, what about SQ, spiritual quotient? We haven't even begun to unpack that. Why? Because it challenges everything that we believe to be true. Therefore, it is incredibly uncomfortable. And until leaders around the world understand that we cannot move forward until we have got IQ, EQ, and SQ, most importantly, SQ, then we are stuck, if you will, in the mud. And John, as long as I've got breath and as long as you've got breath, we have got to challenge the system.
Right. Yeah, I totally get it. And you put it across so well. One of the things that struck me when you were telling us about this, looking ahead for 2022, I tap into a couple of resources. One of them is Jolay, about what is coming up for the year ahead. And these, I believe, are very reliable sources. And it's all about change. It's all about people having their versions of reality changed, and also this emotion of grief, collective grief. And the collective grief could be very much around people having to let go of the version of reality that they've held so close throughout their lives, to realize that actually the truth is so much more different. But the joy of it is, it's so much better. It's so much better than the density and distortion of the story we've been told over the decades that we've grown up with and taken to be that version of reality. Because I know I did. And I sympathize with everybody that is not on that SQ track, because, I was 57 before I even began that journey. So, I had 57 years of being stuck in that, the programmed, conditioned kind of version of reality. And now I think it's a fantastic opportunity. And I think 2022 could be this year where we really do see significant change.
John, on that issue, let's just take 2022. 2 + 0 + 2 + 2 = 6. So 2022 is the number 6 universal year. The number 6 is all about relationships, responsibility, matters of the heart, community, doing good. but primarily relationships and responsibility. Therefore, this is a year where the universal vibration of the number 6 is going to ask questions of all of us in terms of how we have lived our lives in terms of relationships, responsibility, home, family, matters of the heart, etc., etc. And if we've done well, there will be rewards. If we are found to be wanting, there will be very powerful lessons. And you just used a word which lit up my neurology like an absolute Christmas tree: truth. The number that is associated with truth is the number 7. 7 follows on from 6. 2023 is going to be a number 7 universal year. Therefore, the emotional relationship, etc., fallout of 2022 is going to cause, I believe, a global desire to search for a new truth. That will be, as I say, next year. And that will be when messages like this chat that you and I are having, will really find their traction. Because people will then be in the right mindset. I believe that when this video goes out, it will set seeds. And those seeds will lie in people's seed bank, the seed bank of their mind. Some may rot and some may disintegrate and some may germinate. But guaranteed, John, this chat of ours is really, really going to, if you will, gain massive momentum towards the end of this year, early next year. Mark my words, because that is the natural follow-on in terms of the cycle of 9. 1 being the beginning, 9 being the ending. And we are in a very, very challenging cycle right now. It began in 2017, which 2017, 10, and 1 plus 0 is 1. So that was the number 1 universal year. And it goes all the way through to 2025, which is the number 9. And this is going to be a very, very dramatic cycle of 9, where literally, if you will, humanity is going to have the kitchen sink thrown at them. But it is very necessary. And just as the feminine energy has been oppressed and suppressed, that which has been oppressed and suppressed has to fire back. If you look at the universe and the laws of the universe, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So therefore, when this feminine energy surges with extreme momentum, if you will, don't cast your eyes to the heavens or tear your hair out, because it has to surge back with the same energy and force that it has been suppressed.
Right.
With. So whatever this explosion that's going to take place in 22 is nothing more than the absolute equal and opposite reaction of everything that has been done to suppress and keep the feminine energy and everything to do with the number 22 underneath for a very, very, very long period of time. Therefore, it is necessary for this eruption of the number 2 to take place in order for, it's literally like the mountain has got to explode. And once the mountain has exploded, then the landscape becomes level again, and then some form of equilibrium can be restored between the 1, which is masculine and logic, and 2, which is feminine and emotion or intuition. And that's exactly what we're looking for. And it is in 2023, when people will be searching for this truth, that they will be knowingly or unknowingly looking to find or restore the balance between the masculine and the feminine, because you cannot have one operating in isolation of the other. The 1 and the 2, when operating in harmony, give rise to the number 3, which is creativity, the creative act. And that is, if you will, exactly what we are. You, me, everybody out there, 8 billion people around this planet are creative, number 3, expressions of the universe.
Wow. Yeah, funny. This is. I'm convinced, as you say, that we're going through such significant change at the moment. And it's interesting you say starting from 2017, because I've certainly heard that as well from other sources as well. And that period, 2017 to 2025, and certainly 2023 and 2024 to be tumultuous years as well. And it's all about change. And yet, personally, I don't feel daunted by this. I feel excited by it, because I think it's bringing us back to where we need to go to progress for the future. Because I think this is when it comes to light how distorted the picture is that we've been given, that we bought into. And then we start to realize actually just how amazing we each individually are. Because, there's no doubt about it. We're all equals, actually. It doesn't matter whether what your sexuality, your race, your religion, whatever. We're all the same. We all have an equal value. And I think that there's a lot of people out there in life who like to control things, who have put themselves on that pedestal because that's where they want to be, because that gives them control. And often that does come down to creating fear amongst others, because then those others then hand their power to that person, and that it'll elevates them. This is a house of cards that I feel is going to come tumbling down. And I think it's for the betterment of us all, really, because they are very exciting times. And it's fascinating how the numerical science that sits behind all this is pointing this way. I love it.
Well, John, what is incredibly important to remember, and maybe this is a final shot from me into the minds of the people who are watching this video and hopefully absorbing a great amount and thoroughly enjoying this dialogue between you and me, is that earlier I made mention of IQ, EQ, and SQ. If we look at the world that we are living in, if we look at the pace of change, if we look at what happened to our lives as a result of COVID-19, if we look at how much change we have all had to deal with in such a short space of time, if we look at the speed of change that is being wrought upon us every second of every day through technological advancements, one of the most important things for each and every human as we move forward is to understand adaptability and their adaptability quotient and balance. And adaptability and the ability to adapt, I believe, actually is a very unique. So how you adapt to dramatic stress and change, et cetera, would be very different to how I adapt, because we have got completely different intelligent mathematical blueprints. And one of the pieces of research which Suzanne and I have actually been working on developing quite extensively is actually quantifying and qualifying a person's adaptability quotient on an annual basis, and actually starting to map this so that we could start to, if you will, develop a numerical matrix of what numbers you should actually be taking cognizance of in terms of each year or each month or whatever around adaptability, and what is most likely going to be flowing inside of your world and how to best handle this. And really, I mean, this might sound like it's really, really out there, and quite frankly, it is. But this is what I think is so incredibly important. Why should executives sit down with reams and reams and reams of paper and tables and data and charts, et cetera, in order to make strategic decisions about their business? Yet we don't understand the first thing about the numbers or mathematical design that's flowing through our world at any moment in time. Why are billions of dollars, and in fact, it's probably trillions of dollars and pounds and whatever currency you might want to think of, spent every single year around business risk? However, there is so little that is actually understood around individual or personal risk. Why is it that you'll walk up to a CEO and you'll say, what's the most valuable asset in your part of your company? And they'll always say, oh, it's definitely our people. Sometimes they'll refer to them as resources, which I just think is cold and clinical. I don't think people are resources. I think anybody that calls a human a resource really needs to have a great mental reset around how incredibly dynamic and unique we are. Resource is actually, I believe, a very, very, very misguided word in terms of referring to a person. But nevertheless, for the enlightened CEO who has moved beyond a resource and actually talks about the people in his business, isn't it amazing that if you were to actually really sit with them and say, okay, so tell me about the people risk in your business. Tell me about the risk that every single person within your business potentially poses to your business. They can't answer you that. They have no idea. And the reason they have no idea is because nobody has actually ever taken the time nor made the effort to begin to map the individual on a bespoke numerical level. And all of this just takes the world of life coaching and personal development into a completely different ballgame. But anyway, we're not going to go there. That's for an entirely different discussion. But there is so much that needs to be done. And just as we need to completely rethink how we are as individuals, the world of work needs to be completely rethought. The world of business needs to have a complete rethink. And far more effort needs to be put into understanding people on an individual level. And the thing is, that's not just, oh, this is who I am, or the CV, et cetera, et cetera. It's actually through detailed mathematical mapping and modeling. And then you could actually look into the future. And this for me is the really exciting thing. Futurists. If you go onto the websites of futurists today, everybody's talking about technology. Well, what about the person?
Yes.
If people are the most important part of your business, then why is so little futurist or futuristic research being done on people? It's all tech. So I think there's a huge hole. And hopefully through Elevated Planet and the incredible work that you are doing, these messages from a very passionate research scientist like me will start to get out there into the right ear, to the right people, into the right ears, and into the right headspace, John.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time, and I do think that if you could cast a picture forward 5 years hence, okay, and look at the world as it's going to be by then, relative to where we are sitting here now in January 2022, I would bet very strongly that the world we look at there is very, very different. I mean, completely different. People's mindsets will have changed. They will, it is forcing people outside from where they are. And I think that this is the beginning of this journey. And I appreciate everything you've done for us, Chris, for Jolie and I, in helping us to establish this, the Elevated Planet, and to point us in the right direction. And I know that we're going to continue to work together over many years. And it's a beautiful journey to be on. And we will provide the link to 365pincode.com as well, just to give people access to the resources that you have on that site. And, for anybody who would like a reading through 365 Pin Code, I definitely hand on heart endorse that and encourage you to explore it, because it's amazing.
John, you spoke about looking into the future in 5 years' time. A great leader of this world in the realm of technology said that there will be a computer on every single person's desk at a time when computers were inaccessible to the majority of people out there. That has come to pass. The speed at which technology is developing, I believe if we look into the future in 5 years' time, we will find that the intelligent mathematical blueprint of each person, which is completely unique, will form a critically important component of everything to do with that person, from personal development to health, to wealth, to absolutely everything. It really is, I think, going to change the entire world. I believe that once we tap into this intelligent mathematical blueprint, we will be making far more informed strategic decisions on a personal level, on a professional level, on a family level. We will understand things on a far deeper level in terms of relationships, in terms of soul groups, etc., etc. And people might scoff at that idea, but these most definitely exist. Most definitely exist. It's just that it's too uncomfortable for most people to entertain that notion. But John, once again, thank you for the mouthpiece that you have afforded us. And Suzanne and I will just continue to surge ahead with whatever groundbreaking research we do. As we discover really fascinating things, we will obviously just keep on pouring it into your world.
Yes, I truly appreciate it. And it does fascinate me because one of the things I've realized is that, whenever anything really amazing has happened, and I'm talking about positive as well as is anything that, people go into struggles, and you can see it is the case. And, you look at various other sporting examples of things that have just come totally out of left field, and yet you've been able to prove why it's happened. And that this was always destined to be the case. And I find it amazing. And that's another reason why I recommend people to actually have a look at the 365pincode.com site, because there is so much there that that boggles the mind.
John, thanks very much. And I think maybe just a parting comment. I know that the numbers are absolutely bullseye accurate. I've proven it over and over and over again. The greatest challenge that I have is developing the ability to accurately interpret the numerical combinations or the numerical sequences. Most times I get it right. That's why I said to you, I really do believe that as a result of the nurturing of my dad, I have an incredible ability to work with numbers and understand patterns. Sometimes I get it wrong. And that's also part and parcel. That's exciting. It's great to put a prediction out there and get it wrong, because when I get it wrong, it means I go back to the drawing board. I go and interrogate. What didn't I see? What is it that I missed? But sometimes the most frustrating thing is the fact that right now, I think I'm actually the only person on the planet who's doing this research. I can't pick up on anything out there from any other person who is doing this kind of work. And that also gets pretty lonely, because if you are truly going to take something and develop it, you actually need to be surrounded by brilliant people, brilliant minds that are able to challenge and develop and interrogate and tear apart and prove this wrong and prove that right. Brilliant. I mean, the wealth of information that I'm sitting on, if we could put that through proper statistical analyses, no doubt we would start to really identify very powerful trends. Who knows? Maybe these trends will start to reveal incredible things in terms of looking into the future of a person and possibly seeing, well, this could be a time when maybe they could get incredibly ill, depending on circumstances. I mean, how is it? I did the most mind-blowing piece of research on Steve Jobs, which proved exactly that he had a completely unique sequence running in the year when his pancreatic cancer was diagnosed. This isn't random. It's there. It's in the numbers. So there's a lot to this. But it's going to take some very, very, very forward-thinking people. Who knows? Maybe there's some wild card billionaire out there who sees this and says, right, you know what, there's more to this than meets the eye. But until that happens, John, you and I, we just keep on plugging away. And again, sincere gratitude to you. You and Jolie and your Elevated Planet team are doing incredible work, and keep on doing this because you are honoring the 22. My numbers are put together in terms of being a specialist. Your numbers are put together in terms of leadership. Jolie's numbers are put together in terms of master builder. You and Jolie are honoring your blueprints, and that means good stuff's going to come your way.
Thank you. Thank you, and I believe in what you tell me. I've seen the evidence time and again, so I've come to trust it implicitly. So, Chris, that means an awful lot to me, and I am so grateful to you for being on this journey with us. And I think that good things await us. I do think that there is an explosion of spiritual growth out there, just waiting to happen, and it's already starting to unfold. But that energy is just going to feed upon itself, and it's going to be for the betterment of all. So I'm very excited about the future, and I'm very excited about continuing to work with yourself and Suzanne and the wonderful Jolie, and together we can kind of help to accelerate the change in a most positive direction. So
thank you, John. Been an absolute pleasure.
Take care, Chris, and look forward to speaking to you again sometime in the not too distant future. Take care.